Okay, so this one is a podcast about the Royal Geographical Society conference that I'll be attending over this week. I'm here to present initial findings from the PhD and also take some time to write when I'm supposed to be listening to others, but what I like to know, this is how my mind works. It needs inspiration, but also the way that inspiration hits is when I get the input from others. So it's not to say I'm entirely a selfish listener. I'm really looking forward to the theme, which is climate changed geographies, and I've been working on a postdoctoral proposal in secrecy, I guess, that I'd like to just briefly outline because it's climate change related, but it's still early days, so I'll be listening in, understanding the literature a bit more from colleagues, so I don't jump in and then, much like my PhD, have to spend years reconciling what I thought I knew with what the literature says. So the proposal is around how climate scientists who go on expeditions deal with the different places that the field and the lab are. So I'll be bringing a lot of the place perspective and decision-making perspectives that I've developed through my PhD to that study, and also I'm interested in the kind of the dichotomy and the transition between the two. How do you transition from observations to crystallized findings, and specifically, again, kind of the rules of thumb of how do you actually do that as a climate scientist. Whether I include other parts like the communication findings later, it depends on how the scientists themselves look at it, but thinking about the population here that I'm interested in is those people that now for the first time there will be a massive uplift in people going into this profession seriously and will be studying. It's not like it didn't exist, but the expectation is that it will be increasing. I want to study how they make decisions, how they negotiate the lab and the field, and the interventions that I will look at in the methodological approach would start with, I think I want to build a grounded theory of that. Obviously there will be some phenomenological perspective, what's the experience like for them, and then I'll use certain techniques within the instruments for studying that are borrowed from both behavioral science and positive psychology, like experience sampling. We have the technology now to check how the lab versus the field is feeling like. What is it like in the moment? So I'll be devising something like that. And then the outcome that I'm anticipating for this is kind of a set of norms that would be discussed for what the field is like and what the lab is like, and then kind of contrasting the two and seeing how to improve what I'm trying to improve is, I think what I've got in my head is, ultimately, yes, there will be a theoretical contribution, but I also want to study what's the kind of tools, the mental tools that they use, and what's the digital tools I can build to help them as well. Navigate the two. What's missing in the toolkit. So that's the kind of preliminary thoughts. I've put together a little proposal pitch, and I'll be doing my literature review over this coming year as I'm finishing the PhD as well. And then next year, I think I'll start with the exploratory phase of the with the postdoc, finding out how it needs to be tweaked in order to find the right collaborator team. But I'm hoping that part of that could happen even at this conference. When it comes to the PhD itself, I've been doing some writing as I arrived yesterday, and it was Notting Hill Carnival. I didn't expect the buzz to be around, but managed to get some sleep and did some writing of the discussion chapter of the PhD. And today I need to prepare for presenting a poster. It just sucks that we're stuck in Victorian times, so I've not prepared just a printable poster, but I've got a digital version, and I think I've got QR codes on my poster. But basically, what I want to show conference attendees within 5 minutes is, first of all, not to play the game of being told, just present your findings in 5 minutes. Fuck that. I don't play that game. I've been a researcher for long enough to know that that's just people tripping you up to see if under stress you have really baked into yourself what your thesis is about. Like, that's nonsense. That is nonsense. Of course I need to understand what I'm talking about, but I've got reams and reams of data that I can share with you, and I don't need to have that top of mind. We're humans that use tools, and the tools that I need to be at my best, I've devised for myself. So I've created additional resources to receive feedback on the poster, so people will be able to scan, go in digitally, and zoom in and out of all of the details. There's actually 2 layers. At the deepest layer, they'll be able to explore even the anonymized data and see if my kind of ordering of it and my systematizing is in any way different from what they would have put together. So I'll be able to show that, but obviously I'm not gonna take my 5 minutes to show my passion for this project, right? So that's what I'm going to try to do. I'll show them my passion, and anybody that's a stickler because of their personal disposition, I would love to talk to them after, or I would love to share more details with them. And for anyone that's a skeptic, I would love to have a conversation on this podcast or to exchange letters, but I just find that I always get tripped up by more senior academics who play that game. They themselves write academic articles that are short, succinct, and then move on. We're expected for PhDs to write kind of a world-building theory like it is the 17th and 18th century, which is absolutely amazing that we get the opportunity. But then when we get asked to present that in 5 minutes, it's just unfair. It's not the right format. So I've got enough confidence in me to not play that game. But what I'll be able to show in 5 minutes is a conceptual model, right? And at this stage, I'm actually showing a conceptual model that is overfitting. I think I'll be able to summarize that even further. But I've got in my mind a way of doing that I just need some more feedback. So I'll be showing how, given my topic, how do we, can we choose where to live rationally, and specifically focusing on the highly educated, because they're oftentimes the target of policymakers, attract more skilled people with higher education. Obviously, I'm just sticking to the highly educated, and I haven't had any measurement of skills in my sampling, but I've got a sample of graduates, junior, senior, and professors, levels of academic attainment that I interviewed. So the focus there is how they actually made decisions when they were relocating, choosing where to live, what are the contents of their decisions, what kind of things do they care, and abstracting from that a process. So abstracting from, I moved from my birthplace when I was a kid to another place, and all of the places, so we go back to all of their history. And then did they make the decision rationally? And then the conversation goes on to what they learned as rules of thumb over time, right? That's the contribution. So in my model, I'll be showing place 0, place 1, how you increasingly develop agency over time in understanding both the extrinsic needs that you have and then the intrinsic ones, and then how these are classified by participants themselves as more rational or more intuitive, with the more rational tending to be the more extrinsic and kind of more basic needs. So people talked about, so the key priorities for making a decision to move to a place is, having a job, the cost of living, and is it the right size of place for me? The right size of place tending to be this kind of continuity with the pace of life that one's used to from the previous place. So this kind of model of how people over time get shaped by the places they live to is not something that is common in the decision-making literature or in the geography literature or the place marketing literature that I'm trying to contribute to. So from these more rational, extrinsic, basic factors to the more intrinsic, growth-oriented, very intuitive ones that are difficult to put into words, but participants could share them into rules of thumb. These kinds of considerations were discussed as the needs to be close to family and friends and feeling a sense of community. And at the deepest level, by moving to different places and seeing what is the unmovable and unchangeable thing that doesn't change with the change of the environment, then there's a potential for developing an okay relationship with yourself as one participant. So this kind of overarching integrative model is what I would call place actualization, that I've mentioned on the podcast before, and I'm trying to make sure when I communicate it, it's clear. Maybe that's not the label, maybe that's not the right exact words, but I think I'm getting there. I think this is the level of contribution that's expected at the PhD level, and it would ultimately contribute to multiple fields and practice, I hope, because it can relate back anybody that's doing anything to places, whether at any scale, whether it's going to be a city or a country, to relate it back to the needs of the people that live in them, and not in a populist way, but in a very much potentially operationalizable way. So the sub factors in place actualizations would be turned into scales. So as one of there's multiple quality of place and place quality scales out there, but integrating them into something that can be experienced at the individual level, I think can turn conversations like the ones about gross national happiness that Bhutan tried to thinking about net national, or whether it's going to be city happiness. What's the gross? I mean, I don't want the net. I don't want the general. I live as an individual, so you're going to have to take some of the costs off, some of the negatives. And this is where in my model it's not only the positive, but there is this core theme, like kind of the dark triad, the dark side of place actualization, where there are so many people who are basically stagnated because they're stuck in places where they don't feel like they belong, they don't feel like they fit in, they feel like outsiders. And the way the participants talked about that was devastating, because I wasn't expecting to find out when I would ask them about where they love, what was their experience. I wasn't expecting to hear about religious intolerance and that. So that exists as well. So this is where I'm up to. Obviously I'll summarize it. I might record one more podcast. I'm around here, so we'll see how it gets on.